Welcome to the MFS Wellness Podcast, a hybrid structure encompassing health, fitness, self-improvement, and entertainment, where no topic is off limits and all opinions are graciously welcomed.
Let's get on with the show!
And now, here's the host of the show, Mike Sinopoli.
This is the MFS Wellness Podcast. I am Mike Sinopoli, and on today's episode, we are continuing the recent trend of alleviating fear and misconceptions around specific foods. You know, there are a ton of myths to debunk and misinformation to sort out. Today, we're going to go focus on two major foods, and both have had their share of demonization over the past several decades, and those are red meat and eggs. Yes, those pesky little pricey eggs that everyone's talking about the price. We're going to talk about the nutrition of those. And to help me sort this thing out is I have not one, but two gentlemen here with me. And the first guy here, he's making his third appearance on the show. It's a three-peat. It's trainer and all-around fact finder, Nick Becht. Nick, how you doing?
Great, Mike. Glad to be here again.
And I'm saying your name right, Becht? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good. I've always it's a simple name, but I'm always just like, did I say that right? All right, but also joining me here, for the first time, glad to have this guy on. I've been following him on social media for quite some time. Ironically, found him in an article years ago, co-written or something like that. I can't remember what it was exactly, but been following this guy. He's a registered dietitian and a personal trainer. His name is Mike Gorski. Mike, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Happy to make my debut.
Very good. And I did say your name correctly, Gorski, correct? Very
yeah.
good. Okay, good.
100% Polish, baby.
Very nice. Very nice.
Hey,
Yeah.
represent.
Easy enough. All right. So you got a Dago over here to deal with, but hey, it's all right. We all mix it in together and it's going to be good stuff. So before, we get into this red meat and eggs thing that we wanted to kind of put out there, you guys are trainers, coaches. How has it been? It's rare I ever have two other trainers, coaches, whether it's nutrition or personal trainer, fitness. How is business? How is things? For me, I have been slower than usual, I would say, in some cases. I don't know whether that's a reflection of society, inflation, and things. Still got people coming in with the new year. But what about you guys? Nick?
Yeah. For me, I would say that it's actually kind of the same over here in DC. It's quite slow. It's uncertain, right? A lot of people are probably trying to figure out where the direction of the economy is going before making, I guess, quote unquote, luxury choices on where they're going to spend their money. So training is probably going to take a little bit of an impact there, but I haven't lost any clients, so that's good.
Good. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel kind of bad. For me, I've been busier than ever.
That's good.
Yeah, busy's good, but it's one of those things that, especially with, some uncertainty in the economy and whatnot, is of course there's always that, okay, what will I do if someone needs to take a break or stop? Because as you had pointed out, it's at the end of the day, paying for training, as we all know, it's not cheap if you're charging a fair rate, but it's also not a necessity for many people. So, trying to manage that, but also have some lower entry offers if people do need to adjust because of financial circumstances. But at the end of the day, it's between nutrition, training, in person, both online. It's busy.
And Mike, are you getting more as a registered dietitian and personal trainer? Are you getting more any more or less on the training versus the nutrition side, or is it kind of all grouped into one with what you do?
I mean, I've got some clients that just do the training, some clients that just do nutrition, some that do both. So it's hard to say. That kind of ebbs and flows. I'll get some clients that sign up for more short-term nutrition, like they've got a race coming up or a competition coming up, and it's like, hey, I just need someone to help me get dialed in for 16 weeks, a couple months. So with the intent of, okay, this is a short-term thing. And then I've got clients who keep working with me for a long time. So, it's everyone's different.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Everyone is different. And, I did on my last episode, I talked about, returning clients or not, and whether I think it's a good idea that if somebody works with me, that if whether they return or not, if it's a good thing. I know it's good for trust, it's good for business, but sometimes I wonder, if I, did I do enough for that client that they needed to come back for help? So, and I know everybody's a little different, and some just come back because they want the accountability and they want the ease. Sometimes it's easier for that way. So, but that's just the way that kind of goes. It's sometimes easier to have a coach. But hey, let's get to the business here of what we're here to talk about today, and the exciting world of red meat and eggs, because these two foods to me have been unfairly demonized in our society. And we're going to start out with red meat. And, I used an article here by Michael Kummer, and he appears to be a biohacker, CrossFitter, and homesteader. That's what his blog here says. I don't know. That's just what I'm going to read. Looks like a trainer. I don't know. He's got some stuff on here, some science-based things. I'm thinking maybe you guys reviewed this, but what we're talking about with red meat includes beef, veal, buffalo, bison, venison, pork, lamb, mutton, horse, and goat. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have had a client ask me about how much horse meat they should eat in a day. And it's not a joke. And she was a woman she was like traveling overseas. She was Eastern European or something, but like real nice person. And she was just asking me, how much horse meat should I have today? I'm like, we'll figure it out. So, but anyways, guys, with red meat, what, Nick, what has like been something you've heard? What is the main thing you think people have their view of red meat, of what's bad about it? What do you think the main glaring, just negative myth about this food is?
If I were to point to one, it would most likely be cholesterol, saturated fat. How much does red meat impact heart health? And a lot of people typically are pointed to that, I would say, through maybe medical intervention. A lot of people who are experiencing, heightened risk of heart issues later in life might be told to reduce, their red meat consumption.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that. Mike, have you heard the same thing? And as an RD, as an RD, you went and got a degree in this. Did they push that at all when you were going through like your courses?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's I'd say the heart health is a big one. The other big one recently would be cancer, and I know we'll dive into that. But yeah, I mean, my undergrad, a lot of it, I was kind of that guy in class, kind of challenging professors at times with whether it was protein recommendations, red meat. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty old school. I'm trying to think, I've been out of college now for 15 years, 14, 15. So, but even then, I mean, it was pretty outdated. And I know we'll talk about eggs too. That was a big one with cholesterol. And yeah, I mean, a lot of, I think, misconceptions about red meat and eggs, and obviously the nuances of both. And it depends on your definition or their definition of the red meat. And that's where we can really kind of start getting picky with things. But I think we'll do a great job today addressing what we're actually talking about when we're talking about red meat and the positive health benefits of that type of red meat.
Right. So as an RD, do you have to go back and do any sort of like recertification of any kind with all the science that changes so frequently?
Yeah, well, that's another thing is as long as you get your 70 hours of continuing education credits every 5 years, you can keep your RD license. So how you get those 70 hours, it's pretty open-ended. I choose to do courses, or you can do books that qualify for continuing ed that are actually beneficial to both me and my clients. You could also do the free journal quizzes every month and just guess on all 5 multiple choice questions until you get them right to get your 1 credit. And you could do that 70 times over the course of a research phase and not get anything out of it. So, wow. Yeah, it's disheartening. I see stories a lot of times where it's dietitians, and there's a lot of great dietitians out there, but there's a lot that I think just kind of live behind that title, right? Like, well, I'm an RD or I'm a dietitian, therefore I'm the nutrition expert. And it's like, man, some of the stuff I see RDs being quoted as saying, it's like, look, I know guys and gals that are great nutrition coaches that are not RDs. And I would put them against some of these,
Yeah.
up high in their totem pole RDs any day, because yeah, as you guys both know, both in training and nutrition, continuing education is huge, and staying current on the research, but then also the application is such a big thing for anything in our field.
Right. And, I personally, just, going through different social media posts and everything, I run into a few people here and there, and I've gotten flat out, I'm not an RD. I have a nutrition certification through NASM. And, I got literally shamed by an RD before. And Nick, it was actually in a post that you shared with me regarding, I don't know, what was that one with a $48 olive oil? Where someone was
That's right.
I don't know. I got into something.
Casey
I
means,
said,
yeah.
I was just saying that both of these, these views, blah, blah. I was just giving some stuff, and then, no real interaction. And then she just sort of blew me off because of what I was. But I don't know. I guess there's probably a little bit of resentment from, I'm not saying you, Mike, but other RDs that have gone to school and gone through it. And then, you get somebody that goes and does a quick certification through NASM or something like that, that there could be some sort of, I don't know, backlash, resentment, because they didn't go through the course and pay as much money to get the cert, right, or get the or the degree, I think. But I don't know, that's getting off topic. So we see how this goes. You come out here, and all of a sudden, we're X amount of time in, and we start talking about whatever. So, all right. So this thing here now, this differentiates red meat again versus processed meats. So before we get into the myths, guys, what is your take, Nick? I'll start with you. The red meat, like the red meat that's actual, meat that's non-processed and cured and all that stuff, versus your deli meats and things like that versus this. Do you believe there's a significant difference between the two? And how big of one would you say?
Yeah, I would say just like how we address, trying to drive the difference between how much whole foods you should eat versus processed foods you should eat. I really think that when it comes to red meat versus processed meats, it should be that 80-20 again, thinking about mainly trying to eat most of your meat sources through actual, sources that aren't processed and don't add nitrates and stuff like that through the processing. And then, making sure that most of the processed meats that you are eating are, just here and there. We're not trying to have them every single meal. You should be really reaching for more of those whole foods. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these foods a lot of it has to do with nuance around most of your diet. You need to be considering, what you're eating, how much you're moving, and then all of the intakes of fats throughout your diet. A lot of people who are eating, let's say, red meats primarily. Well, if we're eating a lot of processed foods throughout the day, then maybe your overall fat consumption is going to be higher. And so maybe the fats in general are going to be what's giving you some of the heart health issues that we're seeing down the road, but not necessarily just the red meat itself. And then when we're thinking about cancer, maybe we should start, adding in some nuance behind what types of meats we're actually talking about. Is it red meats or is it processed meats that we're really talking about here?
Yeah, it's really like you can just kind of, split hairs every which way and like really push your agenda whichever way you really want. Mike, what do you think? Do you think what's the biggest difference between the two, or how big of a difference do you think the two are?
Oh yeah, it's huge. I recently on my stories shared, it was the big headline. I think it was CNN Health, and the headline was, red meat links to cancer. But you scroll 2 paragraphs in, and this particular study was looking at highly processed red meats. And they even said, they were like, it's the equivalent of eating a hot dog a day. And I'm like, no offense, but what grown adult's eating a hot dog a day? I mean, you can't compare a hot dog to a grass-fed, high-quality steak. I mean, they're so far on opposite ends of the spectrum. Yeah. And like a lot of the studies that point to this, that, and the other, nutritional studies at the end of the day are really hard to do because most of them are observational. It's very hard to do double-blind placebo controls of someone's diet for a prolonged period of time. It would be probably labeled as inhumane. And a lot of times it's food reporting, right? So it's, you look at correlation where it's like, well, this person checked the box that they eat red meat 5 days a week. This person has heart disease. Therefore, it must be the red meat. And it's like, well, did you even look at the rest of their diet? Did you even look at the rest of their lifestyle? Because traditional or more traditional American diets, when we talk about red meat, it's like, well, are you getting a burger with fries and a beer or a Coke? And, or is it a grass-fed steak with like sweet potato and cruciferous vegetables? Like those two meals are totally opposite. Not saying that you can't have the burger and fries and beer, but again, it's what's the frequency? What kind of red meat are we talking about here? How is it prepared? How is it processed? Because there's always going to be some level of processing to some extent. It's just, is it ultra processed like a hot dog or sausage, or is it processed just in the sense that, okay, it's ground beef? Because that's processed, but not really.
Right. Precisely. And that's exactly it. So there you go. Just something to look at. I think those were two great points there. The 80-20 hit, like if you're going to, on your meat that you're going to have, 80% of the time, make it that good cut, that non-processed or low processed meat, and the rest of it, hey, have a sandwich or something like that if you really think you need to, if it helps your day and helps you hit your protein target as well. So getting into the first myth that this guy here brings up, it's kind of what we already talked about a little bit, is consuming red meat increases your risk of cancer. Now, this has been disproven. And Nick, you brought up a really good idea to me offline a little while back, actually. You want to start with that one and what you know about red meat and cancer and where you think that falls short?
Mike, you'd have to remind me what that thought was.
Remember? Oh, that's fine. You brought up something to my attention that it was, okay, let me see if I can get this out correctly without stumbling all over myself. So they did a trial, and it was high vegetables and high meat, right?
Oh, yes.
Remember that one? And,
I got this one, yeah.
And it was cancer, but it was the ones that didn't eat the vegetables that were at the higher risk of cancer. I think you...
Yeah, they were looking at colon cancer.
Is that what it was?
I believe it was colon cancer. I'd have to look back at the study again, but let me try and get the best information out of this one I can. But they basically compared 3 different groups, okay? And we have very minimal studies, by the way, on meat consumption in human randomized controlled trials. That most of the studies are correlative. So it's hard to draw nuanced, understanding on meat consumption when we're only doing correlative studies like this, because there's just so many variables that aren't considered. But that being said, there is actually a decent study where they did some control and they were able to look at some variables here. So they compared 3 different groups. One was just eating plants. One was just eating primarily meats. And then one group was eating a mix of both. And what they found was in the group that ate only primarily meats, there was a bit of a negative side effect to that. With those that ate primarily only vegetables and fruits, there wasn't necessarily any negative side effects. But then when they found what they found with the group that ate both fruits, vegetables, and meats, they saw the same results as those who ate the only fruits and vegetables diet. So when we're looking at it, it has to come from a more nuanced perspective. We have to consider that there's other things within our diet that help us metabolize and process other things in our diet. Like meats, for instance, if we include fiber in our diet, we're probably going to reduce the rates of colorectal cancer because it's helping us clear out our systems. And so it's not that the meat is inherently bad by itself. It's that we should probably be pairing it with a whole round diet rather than just eating meat or just eating vegetables. It's not one or the other. It's usually going to be a little split of both.
Right. So it sounds as if it's more increasing your vegetable intake overall, and the meat is just there as is.
Exactly. Yeah.
To help your overall health, which makes a lot of sense. Mike, what do you make of
primary protein source?
Exactly. Mike, what are your ideas, and maybe any response to that? What do you think about linking red meat to cancer? Where are you at with it? What is the consensus amongst the RDs say about this too?
Well, it depends what RD you ask, but honestly, the latest research, again, they keep trying to, you could call it spin the narrative, whatever you want to say, but it's like every time I see an article linking red meat to cancer, you got to read in the details, and it's never directly like exactly red meat equals cancer. Nick brought up a great point, and I was actually I had a client that was like, you got to listen to Paul Saladino on the PBD podcast. And I'm like, all right, I've heard his spiel before. But what I'll say is I found it kind of funny because I kind of tuned him out for a little while. Even he's changed his view, right? He used to be pure carnivore. Well, now it's more eat your meat, eat your vegetables, fruit's okay. So the thing is, again, I think with a lot of things in nutrition, we like to overcomplicate it. I mean, again, going back to the processed versus unprocessed, like just use half a brain cell for a split second. If I put a hot dog and a beautiful deep red steak in front of anyone and said, which one of these is going to be overall healthier if you consume more of it, I think most people would say the good looking steak. Again, doesn't mean you can't enjoy a good Chicago dog when you're down in Chicago. I always got to do that when I'm down there. But overall, the dose makes the poison, like with anything, and especially the quality of the dose or the lack of quality. So, when you couple all these things together, and you got to look at the human diet is very complex. It's a lot like all the hype and uproar about the glycemic index stuff 10 years ago, maybe. It's like, yes, certain carbohydrates have huge glycemic indexes, but how often are you sitting there just eating that by itself? If you pair that with some protein or with some fat, that brings that glycemic index way down, and it's a moot point. Like, it's not even important anymore. So yeah, if you're sitting around eating pure carnivore, all meat all the time, yeah, it's probably not healthy. I mean, yeah. I've never even tried it, but I can't imagine, the lack of fiber. Right. It probably wouldn't be very fun after a few days.
No, and it's too restrictive and too extreme. And honestly, a vegan diet sounds more enticing than a than a carnivore diet. It's got more options. So I think what we kind of can say to put this one at rest, I think it's a pretty simple thing. The extremes, I think, avoid the extremes. You don't have to go all carnivore. You don't have to go meatless. It's not unhealthy. I mean, I get vegans do it for moral or ethical reasons or whatever the hell, for preference. That's fine. Do that if you want to do that. But I think the extreme of it all is too much. And I think we're in a society now that has to go so extreme. I always go in high level things as well. I say, what is something that our species has eaten since the dawn of time? It's been meat. It's been red meat from something. We used to go out with spears and we used to go hunt something and cook it over flames and eat it. That's just what we did. And, yes, modern medicine has extended our life and everything like that. But, hey, we've been doing that for years. Like, why would that all of a sudden be something that's so bad for us? I guess, unless it was, harvested or however you want to put it, a certain way, but that would be it. So that's it. So just kind of like take it that way and realize that it's the extremes you need to avoid, the balance that you need to implement, and take a little bit of everything. Like you said with that guy who kind of, loosened his grip on carnivore, he started eating fruits, vegetables, and other things and realized, hey, this is the way to go here. So myth number 2 is similar, but it's saying that eating meat increases your risk of heart disease. Now, this is going to be probably a very similar conversation to the cancer thing. And, this gentleman here that wrote this article he put an interesting chart together here of increased risk of death by diet lifestyle factor. Okay, so here's the numbers he put together. I'm just going to trust that he has good sources for this because I'd be all over the place trying to find out everything here. So he says, and this is where he has red meat on there of where it would fall into. So severe obesity, now 93%. Okay, heavy smoking, 80%. Vegetable oil, 62%. Physical inactivity, 48%. Heavy drinking, alcohol, 41%. Moderate smoking, 30%. Sugar, 13%. Processed meat, 11%. Air pollution, 11%. Red meat, 5%. Sodium at 3%. So there you go. You have more to worry about, according to this, for heart disease with air pollution than you do eating red meat, according to this. Nick, have you seen anything? And I know cholesterol gets kind of brought into this. There's the LDL, HDL sort of thing that people have been back and forth with. What about you? Heart disease and meat. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we really just have to look at the whole picture here. I mean, if somebody's lifestyle, let's say they're not working out, they're not walking enough, they don't do any cardiovascular exercise, and then their diet is including a lot of meats, but also a lot of processed foods, well, then we can probably assume bad outcomes, right? As you said, obesity is the number one, related issue towards heart issues. Well, then we need to think about what comprises that factor first before we start thinking about all of these other smaller issues that aren't going to actually add up too much to that bigger picture. It really blows my mind that one of the first things that, a cardiologist recommends is to reduce red meat consumption. Look, I'll say this, if somebody's at the risk of heart disease, then yes, probably it's important to reduce that, but it isn't the first thing that should come out of their mouths. It should be, exercise. It should be cardiovascular, some sort of cardiovascular training that helps work them up to a better state of being. But we shouldn't be just solely focused on the red meat consumption. We should be, encouraging fiber intake and encouraging other ways to get to your food in other than just eating processed food consistently, because that's what's going to be feeding back to this whole issue of weight gain, which is going to be the primary issue that people are facing when it comes to anything related to the heart.
Right. Red meat, red dye, it's all going to kill you. But but hey, what do you say, Mike? You got anything to add to that as far as heart disease and red meat go, or is this list pretty much on point with what we are doing with this cardiovascular diseases?
I mean, the list is solid. I can't confirm those exact numbers, but I like the point Nick brought up. Again, with cardiologists, the first thing they're saying is cut out red meat, right? I always say you got to look at this again. You got to look at the big picture. If somebody is, say, 100 pounds overweight, traditional RDs and nutrition folks might say, okay, we got to put them on a heart healthy diet, or maybe their blood pressure's high. We got to put them on the DASH diet, low sodium. Or if they're type 2 diabetic, okay, we got to go carb controlled. Here's a better idea. What's the best diet for them that's going to help them take as much stress off their body as possible? And that means losing some of that excess body fat. It doesn't mean we're going to get everything off overnight, but even a 10% reduction in excess body fat will improve all of your internal health markers, especially the metabolic health markers, every single time. So instead of, if someone's dealing with heart disease, maybe we don't demonize the red meat. Maybe we look at, okay, how do we just get this person to lose a little bit of weight? And the other side of the coin is we got to remember the heart's a muscle. It can be trained just like the rest of our body. It doesn't mean you're going to put them on a treadmill and have them run for an hour every day, but maybe they're not moving. So on one end of the spectrum, we can strengthen that muscle so it doesn't have to work as hard to pump blood. At the same time, we can address their diet, get them to lose some weight, whether it's a heart healthy, a DASH diet, or a combination of all the above, and just put them in a calorie deficit while supporting their internal health. And guess what? Their markers are going to improve. So again, it's this over stressing of details that I don't want to say don't matter, but people get so fixated on like, if this, then that, if this, then that. And it's like, we got to look at the person as an individual here. Everyone's going to be different. And yes, maybe there's data showing, sure, we need to cut back on the high saturated fat stuff, of course. But if they're cutting out all red meat because they were told that's what's leading to their heart disease, but they're not losing any weight, they're still eating highly processed, sugary junk food. I mean, we got to address everything here. And so it's hitting it from all angles and helping that person as an individual, not based off of what a study said.
Yeah, right. To add to what Mike said, I mean, talking about the saturated fat, you got to put that in context too, right? That's right. Being influenced by the overall everything else that's coming in. And so if your saturated fat is like, increased through other food as well, then it's not necessarily just the red meat that is adding to that overall overconsumption of saturated fat. So why do we focus in on this whole food that is, giving us a lot of dense nutrients and is, a decent source of protein versus all of the other places where they might be getting too much saturated fat? all of the processed foods that they're eating are most likely containing some percentage of saturated fats. And so why aren't we focusing on that? I mean, my dad, he had a heart attack at age, I think 48, which is pretty much the age that almost most men have heart attacks, if they do at all. And one of the only things he came home with was eat less red meat, eat more fiber, which, hey, I'm very happy with the fiber part. Well, actually, not less red meat. They said don't eat red meat at all, and then eat more fiber. The elimination part to me, like just as a 17-year-old kid who was just getting into, working out all the time, I was eating steak all the time. That didn't click to me at all. I was like, wait, what? Then I got to school. I heard the same things being repeated. I was like, there has to be some context behind this, because I just don't understand how, it can keep leading to it just doesn't make sense to me. So looking through it, getting down the road, it makes a lot more sense to consider a lot of other factors when we're talking about this.
Right.
But one thing I would say is maybe we're being overly precautionary in the medical field. Maybe that's just kind of the MO. And I understand that that's mainly because a lot of people might not even apply the information that is being told to them. And so they're going to the extremes just to make sure that they take those steps. I can understand that approach a little bit, but I wish that there was some more nuance, because we shouldn't be speaking to people like they're stupid. We should be explaining it to them.
That's actually a really good point, because what Mike said earlier about it's in the dosage, and like they should give you a X amount. This is what you should have a day: 3 ounces, 4 ounces, whatever it is. And but they seem to always just say, stop eating that, don't do that, unless that's just their way of protecting themselves. And I don't know, but I just feels like we have this. It's like this society of extremes of just cut it all out or have it all at once. So it's like there's no middle ground. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And this one's kind of wrapped in cholesterol. It's just sort of in there now. LDL versus HDL. Do you guys? What is the whole you get a client that needs to lower their cholesterol. Mike, I'll start with you on this one. Do you ever have to worry about LDL versus HDL, or is this thing? What is the significance of the two? They always say the LDL is the bad cholesterol, the HDL is the good cholesterol. But like if I'm in a site like MyFitnessPal, and I'm helping a client put a meal plan together or something so that they can keep their cholesterol under a certain amount, they don't differentiate the difference between HDL and LDL. So they're actually going to hinder themselves from eating certain foods like eggs because of the cholesterol level in there, which is the HDL. What do you say about something like that? That's something I've run into.
Well, just to be clear, the endogenous production of cholesterol is where we render, VLDL, LDL, HDL, and then there's other offsets there. Dietary cholesterol essentially is just cholesterol. You look at a molecular structure, it's very similar. It's a backbone of many hormones, sex hormones in the body. So yeah, we can talk dietary cholesterol, which that's been debunked for a while. The FDA finally caught up to it and actually totally removed it from having a limit. But as far as clients go, it's one of those things where, okay, if you've been diagnosed with high cholesterol, right? First, we got to differentiate between HDL and LDL. Some doctors still don't. And again, it's not a knock on all doctors. I'll say that for the record, but I still get some clients who come to me and they're like, my doctor told me my cholesterol is high. And I'm like, well, let's take a look at the numbers. I'm like, no, you got high HDL and your LDL is low. Like, you're good. Total cholesterol. I'm willing to say total cholesterol means pretty much nothing. If your LDL is high enough, if your HDL is low, then you can get in the weeds even more and start looking at individual particle size, which you're not going to get that from your general practitioner. You're going to probably request that from a different lab, because then you get into not all LDL is necessarily bad. It's more so the ApoB proteins that come with it that tend to block the arteries if there is calcification, and they kind of get caught and eventually can build a plaque and build a wall, and then you have a heart attack or a stroke. But yeah, it's one of those things where the evidence shows, okay, we want to obviously watch the processed foods, watch the processed red meats. Sure. I would just say processed meats in general, but then also keep your fiber intake up, because there's a direct correlation between having higher fiber. So like Nick said, with the study looking at fruits, vegetables, and meat and the colon cancer, same thing with cholesterol. You can keep your fiber up, you're probably going to be all right. I mean, this is essentially what got me into the field of nutrition. So when I was in high school, my dad got diagnosed with high cholesterol, and his doctor wanted to put him on a statin right away. And he said, well, give me, 6 months, see if I can get this figured out. My dad, he wasn't overweight. He's never really been overweight. He just started his own business, high stress, not working out a lot, eating more processed stuff. We ate so much damn salmon and broccoli and olive oil in that house. But credit to him, he was able to avoid going on the drug and reversed his high LDL cholesterol. And that was the first time where I'm like, oh, damn, that's kind of cool. Like, he was able to do that. And he did start taking a over the counter. It's a plant sterol and stanol supplement. It's kind of the plant form of cholesterol, kind of mimics it in the body. And so your body will excrete more of the endogenous cholesterol that produces, and that can lower your cholesterol by about 5 to 8%. So that was kind of what got me into going to school for nutrition, because I thought that was pretty cool. He was able to avoid going on a statin, which now that I've learned more about these drugs, is there's some pretty nasty side effects with it. And if you can avoid going on it, not everyone can, but if you can avoid going on it, you should try, because they're not always the greatest things. There's always those laundry lists of side effects. And again, not telling people to stop taking their drugs and all that, but
yeah,
if there's dietary interventions that you can do to keep working towards it, you really gotta keep working at it.
Right. And I read a stat once before that about 80% of medications that we're all on here in the country that it could be eradicated off just by changing diet. I know some are necessary, of course, that's going to be there. And we're grateful that it's there. And what a great, motivation and inspiration your father is for you, man. That's fucking awesome. I really respect that somebody has that wherewithal to say, no, I don't want that drug. Let me try to do this myself, and then did it. I think we need to see a lot more of that, because it seems like we're a pill first, medicate first society. And once you get on the drug, sometimes you don't get, if it alleviates a few things for you, you're not going to have the inspiration to go ahead and do it yourself to get off of that. And they get a customer for life. So that's what they do. And it says here, this is from the article, saturated fats and dietary cholesterol are good for you, and they don't increase the risk of developing heart disease. That's been demonstrated by several studies. And then says what does cause chronic disease is the consumption of industrial seed oil, vegetable oils, because they contain high amounts of volatile, inflammatory, polysaturated fatty acids. So we're not going to get into seed oils today, because that's going to take forever. So I will move along to the next one. I don't know much about this at all, so I'll let Nick, you could start with this one, or Mike, whoever wants to jump in. But myth number 3 says consuming meat increases your risk of diabetes. I don't know if I have ever heard that as, a myth. Have you guys heard that one before?
Yeah, I can't say I've heard that one before.
Well, let's pass that. Well, there you go. Another one. Diabetes, not, you don't need to do that. That's not even a thing. Number 4, meat causes blockages in blood vessels that lead to strokes. Have you guys heard that one, Mike?
I mean, that's pretty much along the same lines as raising your cholesterol.
Correct.
Right. Kind of already touched on that.
Yeah, I would actually make a statement to the earlier statement from the article, which says, no saturated fat consumption increases, chances of heart risk. I would push back on that and just say that any overconsumption of anything is going to most likely lead to some sort of bad effects. And so if we're putting stresses on the system at such a high amount, I think maybe we should consider that. Of course, we also have to consider that diet can be consistent, but lifestyle may not be. And so while the diet may be consistent and fine and working for you, while your lifestyle is one way, your lifestyle might change. You might become inactive for several months at a time. And typically, we don't really adjust our dietary habits all too much with our lifestyle habits, unless we're adding a lot more movement and stuff like that. So if we're reducing our movement, but the intake is the same, there could be some negative side effects to that saturated fat consumption.
Right. That makes total sense. It kind of goes along with what we were saying too about, we said it on the last episode we did together, of how anything could be poison in high enough dosages. So perhaps the article went a little too extreme in their own opinion there, I believe. All right, myth number 5. Never heard this one before either. We can breeze over it, but eating meat makes it harder to maintain a healthy weight. I don't know about that. I've always thought that adding meat and protein was always something that helps you maintain weight. It's literally the missing piece for most people. I feel like they're in a protein deficit. Most people that come to me and need help, I have to eat that much protein. So I don't know if you heard of that one before, Mike.
No, I mean, I think that's just, again, okay, you picture a lot of times, like if somebody says, well, I stopped eating carbs, and then you ask them, well, and I lost weight. Well, what'd you stop eating? They're like, well, I stopped eating burgers and pizza. And then you kind of break it down. And you're like, hey, those foods are actually, they might have more calories coming from fat than carbs. So it's one of those things where it's like, sure, if somebody's like, well, yeah, I eat a ton of hot dogs and sausage and, kielbasas every day. And it's like, well, yeah, okay. How many calories are you getting in a day? Versus, again, it's the same thing where oversimplification is what gets us in trouble, and it causes people to freak out.
Absolutely.
Over unnecessary things.
It sure does. And I remember when the low carb craze was really booming. I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe longer now. My father was doing it. I think he went like a year, like with no carbs, like minimal nothing. He was not eating a carbohydrate, he didn't have a drink, nothing. We'd go to this place out here, if you're ever in the area, guys. It's called Lou Malnati's Pizza. You been there, Mike?
I know what you're gonna say. The low carb.
The low carb. So what they do is, Nick, if you're not familiar with it, it's a deep dish pizza. It's a real thick, but instead of the crust, they take sausage. And they lay sausage throughout the whole pan. The whole thing is this greasy ass fucking sausage, and then they fill it up with sauce and cheese and your toppings and whatever the hell. So this pizza comes out, and you cut it, and it's just the crust is sausage, and you lift it up. It's got cheese melted all over it, and I'm like, this has got to be more calories, and then it would be with you had the crust in it. In my opinion,
that sounds incredible though.
It looked good, but I mean, I'd take it the standard way because I like the crust, but. Yeah. I was just like, man, it didn't look, it didn't look healthy to me at all. I was sitting there, I'm like, this looks like it's just dripping in grease. I'm like, what the fuck? So anyways, so myth number 6 here, unless Nick, did you have anything you wanted to say about meat making it any harder to maintain a healthy weight, or is that one just kind of something to breeze over?
Oh, I mean, the number one thing that I usually tell clients whenever they first work with me, as long as, the consumption correlates, is eat more meats, eat more fiber. Those are the 2 number 1 things I say. Eat more protein in general, but you know, mostly getting that from meats. That's just going to boost your satiation for most meals for a long time.
And to make people understand this that might be listening. So, and you might hear like, well, people, these dietitians, these coaches, they tell me to eat leaner meats. Like, yes, eat leaner meats, but not because, the fat is bad or causing any issue, but when you eat more fatty meat, you're going to take in more calories because fat is 9 calories per gram versus protein, which is 4 calories per gram. And the more fat grams you put in, with the protein, the closer you're going to get to that caloric maintenance level and go over it and miss your protein target. So I hope that makes sense to anybody listening. So that's why you want to have the lean meats.
Yeah, I equate that to your post that you made on cooking with oils. Look at the calorie difference between just cooking a standard meal without oils and then adding a couple tablespoons of oil, and you got, a couple hundred calories added on.
300 extra calories. I put, Mike, I think you might have seen it. I put two same plates, but I cooked one with oil and some butter with chicken, broccoli, and rice, and one was 880, the other one was 540. Simply just by the invisible calories showing up. So that kind of goes along with meat, and the fattier meat, maybe. What's crazy is that if you're eating that fatty meat, you're adding in higher calories, less protein. That adds up in your system and gets you to that obesity state. And then that's what causes the problems. That's what causes all these illnesses that we were talking about. And that reflects on the chart that we talked about earlier in this thing. So myth number 6 here is meat carries the highest risk of foodborne illnesses. So would that be like the way that this meat is, like processed and put together? And like,
if you don't cook it.
Yeah, if you don't cook it, sure. But yeah, once you cook it, even if it's, this guy here even says that, he has his pretty much raw, because I'm very, very much, guys, I should ask this. This is an important question, guys. And I want to know, And this is going to actually determine how good of friends we stay. How do you get your steak done at a restaurant? Nick,
I'm a big medium rare guy.
medium rare. Mike,
Medium rare.
okay, I'm also a medium rare guy, but I won't say no. I won't say no to a rare steak.
No.
I'll go rare. So yes, if you burn that thing and put ketchup on it, I don't know, we can't be friends. But so yeah, I mean, if you cook your meat, even if you leave it a little bit medium rare, I don't think you're at a high risk for foodborne illnesses. This is probably just a myth that people fear. I think I know somebody personally that is very very scared to eat any pink or red in the meat. Anything to worry about with that, Mike?
So that's a big one. Look, if it's a steak, the inside, the part that stays pink, if you have it even rare, has not been touched by the outside. There's no bacterial growth in there. The foodborne illness would be on the outside. So where you run into problems is with things like ground beef. Okay, if you have a hamburger, yeah, from a foodborne illness standpoint, you would want your hamburger medium to well done, so no pink on the inside. But again, the fear of the foodborne illness, I mean, more foodborne illnesses come from packaged foods and honestly vegetables because they're not washed properly. They get E. coli on them. And again, I'm not trying to demonize vegetables, but even the big one, like with pork, listeria and trichinosis, like that's deadly. I think the last case of trichinosis in the United States was like, I don't know, don't quote me on it, like 50 plus years ago. And I guarantee you there's people eating raw pork everywhere. I had some pork tenderloin just last night. Inside was still a little pink. It was cooked to 140. It was dynamite. It was so good. And I'm happy to report my guts still feel good as of right now. It'll be my leftovers for lunch the next 2 days. So maybe then it'll catch up to me. But yeah, I mean, you're seeing more food recalls due to stuff that's in like super packaged, overly processed stuff. So it's like, yeah, the foodborne illness thing's kind of been debunked.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it even says it in this article that vegetables and leafy greens are the most common source of food poisoning. So like exactly what you said is just echoed right here in this article. There's a guy on Instagram. I got to go check on him. I haven't checked in a while. It's been a while. He's
the guy eating
you know what I'm going to say? The raw chicken guy. Did you see him? Mike?
Yeah, with the frizzy hair.
Yeah. He was on like day 23 last of eating raw chicken every day. He was eating like a raw chicken breast every day or something.
I think he's made it over 100 days now.
Is he? He's still alive,
Yeah.
huh? Oh, good.
Yeah, he's kicking. Yeah.
Good for him, man. He's
gone to fish and everything.
Probably got a good protein intake going and all that.
Does his hair look good though? Because maybe that's what I need to do.
I've given up on my hair, man. I'm just gonna keep this thing, keep this bear. That ship has sailed.
Slow maintenance.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Myth number 7 is that meat contributes to erectile dysfunction. I can say, listen, without giving too much information, I have done a test on this on accident, and that's not real. So, you guys got anything to add to that?
Absolutely not. I think you covered that one, Mike.
I mean, I think where that's coming from is what was that documentary?
See if it says it. Maybe it says it in
Game
here.
Changers. Maybe
Game Changers.
Oh, there you go.
Right, and they did that one little part, and this is one of my clients. He was asking me about this because look, what's gonna catch a guy's attention more than saying, "Hey, you're not gonna be able to function in the bedroom." Like, okay, you got my attention. How do I make sure I avoid this? Well, it was where they took like 5 college athletes, right? So prime specimen, super healthy guys. They had them eat the regular beef burrito, and then the Arnold Schwarzenegger sponsored bean burrito. And with the bean burrito, they got more nocturnal erections. And they had more blood flow.
It's a good Arnold you do.
I've been working on it for like 20 years.
Good. Very nice.
But it's like, well, okay, yeah, because they found lower content of fat in their blood, which would make sense if you had a lower fat burrito that didn't have meat in it and it had beans. And it's like, I don't know about you. I mean, who's crushing a steak burrito and then 5 minutes later they're like, "Hey baby, you ready?" Like,
I don't know. That's the one that's like I'm gonna be like lip as fuck because I'm just gonna be a little overstuffed there. Not gonna be
Plus
moving.
you're getting creatine.
There you go.
So
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Come on,
think it's
guys.
just that's like pure
And
pure porn.
Game Changers was a pretty biased documentary from like what 10 years ago from Netflix or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they really pushed the vegan agenda on that one. I think that was like the big game changer, no pun intended, for people that really I remember hearing that at the gym. Somebody, I don't know what it was, 5, 7 years ago. You know, it was one of those moms that works at the gym. Oh, you see Game Changers, don't eat meat anymore, blah blah blah. I'm like, come on.
Well, it was really well produced because it was produced and directed by James Cameron.
Oh,
So it
no
was
way.
from an entertainment value, it was really well done, and they made a great case. But it's like I always say, any of these nutrition documentaries that you see, it's like a political debate, right? They're only going to present their side as the right side.
Yes.
And we can leave out evidence showing otherwise. And so, yeah, it was really well done. But if you want to talk about conflicts of interest, I know James Cameron's wife, I think, is like the majority shareholder of the biggest plant-based protein company, or at the time. So again, it's one of those things where, like, well, of course, at the end of the day, if you're standing to make a profit selling a plant-based protein powder, sure, you're going to present a huge argument showing all the bad things. And yeah, with the erection issues, I think that's more just like, again, what's going to catch a guy's attention more than saying you can't perform.
And it all boils down to the same thing. It's on all spectrums, not just food, but every which way. It's fear. Catch your attention with fear, sell the solution. And that is where you follow the money. And then you realize you're being bamboozled and you're being manipulated by somebody with an agenda. And you have to really be open to that. That's not conspiracy theorist talk. That's actually doing your due diligence for your own self and people around you. You have to see where these people are coming from and what angle they have and why they want you to take it. And it really takes a lot of effort. You can't just blindly listen to something, because you know what? I've watched these vegan inspired documentaries before. Maybe I think I might have even seen Game Changers and a few others. And I even sat there questioning myself. I said, oh, fuck, I ain't going to eat meat ever again. I'm not going to eat this shit anymore. And I, then I just come back to reality. I'm like, well, I don't know about this. But anyways, number 8 is that most meat has hormones in it. That's a myth. I don't know much about it. Either of you guys, Nick, do you know anything about hormones in meat?
Well, I guess you can circumvent any worry of that by going to, I guess, more grass-fed, pasture-raised meats, can't you? But I really don't know if there's any substantial worry about consuming the hormones in meats.
I've always heard hormone. That word gets thrown around so much. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, like Nick said, is if that's a concern of yours, you can go more of the free range or grass fed, grass finished, all organic. But the bigger thing is, again, the bigger picture is the bigger picture. If we're getting so focused on, well, I shouldn't eat steak because there might be hormones in it, yet I'm going and not working out and crushing bags of Doritos and ordering, the cheese pizza from Pizza Hut or whatever it is, you're missing the bigger picture. It's one of those things where I think we need to learn more, see more. If there is an issue with quantity consumption, sure, let's talk about it. But right now, I think, again, it's just one of those, like, a point to try to get people's attention and move them over this way.
Right. No, it makes total sense. Everything you're saying there. I think some of these are some lesser known myths, and we only have 2 left here, and then I'll get through them real quick. Myth number 9: meat can make you resistant to antibiotics. Nick, have you heard anything about that?
No, I've never heard anything on that one.
How about you, Mike?
No, I would say that's probably just, again, based off of the fact that they may be using antibiotics in the cattle to treat certain things. And it's kind of really, really, really grasping at straws and trying to connect the dots, where it's like, well, yeah, if you take too many antibiotics, you can become antibiotic resistant. Therefore, if you eat a lot of meat that has antibiotics, maybe you could become antibiotic resistant, which, as far as I know, I haven't heard of any causation cases of that happening.
Right.
These last 2 kind of sound like whenever people point to the like your gut microbiome, when people barely know what we're talking about in the first place, but they're like, but the impacts on the gut microbiome. And you're like, and that does what? We don't know. Okay, well then why are we bringing it up? Why are we fear mongering about it if we don't even know the impacts of it yet? So.
Right, precisely. And that's exactly how this he ends that little section. He says, however, if you purchase meat from brands that don't use antibiotics for their livestock, there is absolutely no issue. So echoes what you said. Last one kind of like encompasses the whole thing. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it. It just says that myth number 10 is that meat increases your risk for premature death. So I think we can say that since we've debunked and read this article through, that chronic heart disease, diabetes, cancer is not being caused by red meat, that you could probably say that your lifestyle is what will lead to a premature death or a stroke of bad luck. Right, gentlemen? Nick?
Absolutely. I mean, I will say the carnivore camp likes to point at, places like Hong Kong and stuff where they do eat a lot of meat, but we also have to think about the culture behind where, those places, these people are walking a lot more. There's a lot of different things within their lifestyles that we don't consider or even enact here in the US. So we can't use those to directly correlate, but then we can also use those to draw some conclusions on it. Well, maybe it's not necessarily the meat, but it's the lifestyle that is, impacting a lot of those downstream effects.
Very true. Mike, you got anything to add?
No, Nick said it well. I mean, it's, again, the bigger picture's got to be the bigger picture.
Right. And, so with that being said, we know what meat is not. Now, what is it? So it's an excellent source of essential and non-essential amino acids. This is all 9 essential amino acids. I won't go too deep into that and bore everybody, but you need 9 essential amino acids. Your body doesn't produce those. You can only get those through food. And that's an ultimate food to go ahead and consume if you're working on building muscle, maintaining muscle, keeping your strength up, things like that. Meat, has no carbohydrates, little effect on your blood sugar. Meat's an excellent source of highly bioavailable vitamins and minerals, including several B vitamins, copper, iron, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus. The list goes on. Zinc. Meat's a great source of healthy saturated fats that will not clog your arteries, but just not too much, right, Nick? Organ meats. You guys, we didn't talk about organ meats. This is liver. They have high concentrations of micronutrients, vitamins, and all of that. Meat has vitamin K2. And it's rich in creatine, which plays an important role in brain function and muscle building. So anything else to add other than those, or is that kind of a good rundown of why someone should have red meat? Other than that, if you just fucking enjoy it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, B12, heme iron, zinc, creatine, all those things are going to be benefits in high doses. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think, okay, if you choose not to eat meat, especially any meat at all, so you're vegan, you do have to be aware of potential micronutrient deficiencies, which Nick pointed out, B12 is a big one. So Mike, like you had said, okay, if you choose to go vegan for ethical reasons, good on you, right? That's your choice. But you do need to be aware of, being vitamin B12 deficient, being iron deficient is a serious issue. So you need to be supplementing with that, and you can get plant form supplements. They're not as bioavailable as the meat form. That's just a fact. Just like the iron, heme iron versus non-heme iron, the iron from meat is much more bioavailable. So yeah, I mean, it's especially good quality meat. It's a powerhouse of all those minerals, all those nutrients. Creatine is getting more and more popular right now. I've got more clients asking about creatine because they heard, oh, it's good for women as they age for their cognitive effects. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And so, yes, red meat is where you're going to find the highest concentrations of creatine. But that said, to get a 5-gram dose of creatine, you do need to eat about a pound of meat a day. So if you are interested in supplementing with creatine, you should still supplement with it, unless you are someone who's eating a pound of red meat a day, which at that point, you may be going overboard in other things. Again, I'm not going to say that eating a pound of red meat a day is bad or going to cause heart disease, but that's kind of on that other end of the spectrum where you could run into some other issues, if not at least micronutrient deficiencies, because if you're eating that much meat, you may be missing out on eating other things that your body needs.
Yeah, and Mike, as a point of clarification for the listeners, you mentioned B12 and bioavailability. Can you explain what that means? Bioavailability?
Yeah, so it's just how well your body can use that nutrient. So the bioavailability for B12 coming from an animal source like meat is your body can use most of it, right? Whereas from a plant source, I believe the vegan form of B12 comes from like an algae. It's you've got to get more of it. And then it's kind of like a subpar version of it. So yeah, it can help prevent B12 anemia. Same thing with iron. So the heme iron, which is found in meat, is most bioavailable. So your body can use it for regenerating red blood cells, helping like women, if they have really heavy periods and you've got a lot of blood loss, it can help prevent iron deficiency anemia. Whereas non-heme iron, which is found in like spinach and other green vegetables, yes, it's in there, but it's not as bioavailable. So with that, it's often encouraged to actually take vitamin C with it, which actually works out pretty well. And it's kind of cool, like nature worked out that way. Whereas a lot of the high non-heme sources of iron are also higher in vitamin C, or they're also foods that tend to pair really well together.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Mike. And yeah, like you were saying, a vegan diet needs to you can go on a vegan diet and be very healthy and figure these things out, but it does take some extra work, and you're gonna have to do that because hey, Doritos, Oreos, that's all vegan. You can eat all that stuff on a vegan diet technically, and you miss out on that kind of stuff. And the last thing about red meat, so like what to have, like I think it's about 250 calories for 100 grams of cooked beef, and it's about 35 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat. So that's like a decent serving size. I think you could double that up if you're a man. Depends on where you're at, your protein goals and everything like that. So, again, vitamin B12, just 100 grams of beef gives you 102% of your daily intake that they recommend you have. So I think that's a good amount to have included in your diet. I think 3 to 4 ounces a day is not a problem for anybody. That's just my take. Do you guys, when you guys are working with your clients, you limit red meat to them at all in any way, or you just give them a reasonable amount, or do you tell them to have X amount, or how do you guys approach that if they're fearful of it? Nick?
Nick, you want
Yeah.
to go?
Yeah, sure. I honestly, I take it by case. I really like to just go off of preferences for the most part. But I really don't address it directly at all. If we're talking about, concerns for the heart, I might mention, we might want to look at reducing our overall saturated fat consumption. But do I point a finger at just red meat? No, I do mention that it is a source, so they are, knowledgeable on that. But I'm not going to just say, let's take all the red meat out and then your problem is fixed, because that's only maybe a percentage, and if that, maybe a very small percentage of that problem.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, it's looking at it on an individual basis, but I don't think I've ever told someone to not eat red meat. I'm always trying to address the lowest hanging fruit first. And if it's, like a highly processed one of those giant cookies that's like 600 calories and it's got 30 grams of saturated fat in it, well, there's no red meat in that cookie. So we should probably address that first. If there is red meat in that cookie, that's an interesting cookie.
You never had a bison cookie? It's delicious.
No, I mean, I'd be down.
Hey, why not, man?
I'm not picky.
Hey, it's all good. So that kind of like puts a bow, I think, on the red meat, guys. I think, everyone, don't be afraid of it. At this point, we've had it since we were cavemen, and we've had it up until this time. And there's been a lot of changes in how we live in our lives. We're more idle than ever. There's more processed food available to us than ever. Our portion sizes are out of control. Restaurants sell, ambience. They sell a value. They sell size. They sell taste. So that's what you're just tempted left and right. And it all kind of comes together to form this easily, whether it's by design or not, you just lifestyle that just becomes horrible, as in a sense. But like that, it wasn't just red meat, eggs too. And I don't have such a long list for the eggs. I really just have one. And I think what happened with eggs, and if you guys know of others, it's the cholesterol. Like whenever I was working with a client or something like that, like they said, oh, cholesterol, the first thing Like it's like boom. The first thing to come, I got to stop eating eggs. I have to stop eating eggs. Um, Nick, what about you? Other than the whole cholesterol fiasco, because it keeps on being like eggs were always that food that's one day it's good, next week it's bad, next year it's bad, now it's good again. What are your thoughts on the demonization of the egg and how it's our friend one week and our enemy the next?
I think it exemplifies how science has kind of changed with our understanding of dietary cholesterol. I mean, I think the headlines probably correlate almost directly with our understanding of dietary cholesterol, other than, I guess, the recent headlines. But, understanding that dietary cholesterol is only a portion of what we're talking about here. And that it's not necessarily the cholesterol from eggs that's going to be your main concern.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I had to pull this up because really the only other food group I knew of having high cholesterol was like shellfish, so shrimp, lobster,
Right.
squid. But apparently the highest, richest source of cholesterol is beef brain. So now we're talking cholesterol and red meat.
Oh,
But we can leave that one out. I don't think people are eating a lot of beef brain. Even though I did try it at a restaurant in Chicago once.
how was
Oh,
it?
wow.
It was actually pig brain. It was gross. It was terrible. It was like the tiniest little bite, and it was at this the restaurant was fantastic. I can't remember the name right now, but oh, dude, it was wild.
How much did it run you?
I don't know. It was part of a bigger party, and so they had this like full pig, and they cooked it up like spit style, and it was super good. But then they brought this tray with all the specialties, and it was like the brain, the eyeballs. The eyeballs each came with a shot of bourbon. So my buddy and another guy did the eyeballs with the bourbon shot. I tried the smallest little like pea-size amount of brain just to say I did it, and I almost puked everywhere. Anyways, so yeah, it's again with the cholesterol. This is something that some scientists and researchers have been talking about for 20 years. Like, hey, maybe we don't need to be demonizing dietary cholesterol. And like I said earlier, it's only recently caught up to more mainstream where it's like, oh, what do you know? We don't need to be worried about dietary cholesterol. And I've been eating, and again, I'm a case study of one. I'm also healthy weight, I'm active, yes, but I've been eating like at least 2 eggs almost every day of my life for I don't know how many years now. And my cholesterol is phenomenal, the best. But again, these observational studies, you ask your average American, how often do you eat eggs? X amount of times per week. Okay, great. What are they eating them with? I mean, they're eating them with bacon, a highly processed meat, high in saturated fat, high in salt, sausage patties, again, highly processed red meat, pancakes, French toast, waffle, cereal. I mean, when I'm eating my eggs every morning, it's a breakfast scramble. I got eggs, egg whites, crap ton of veggies in there. And then right now I'm on an oats kick where I'm having some oats with fruit and some other granola type seed stuff in there. And again, it's the context is really what matters, but the cholesterol thing has pretty much been put to bed. I mean, that's anyone still making that point, especially a medical professional, needs to go back to school or at least do some continuing education. And I will say that with full confidence.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It feels like some things are very difficult to unlearn. Like they get so ingrained that like you almost, without even thinking, it's a subconscious reaction that eggs, cholesterol, that little yolk, that thing is going to destroy us. I was kind of like it, like when somebody's like making eggs and they're just using the whites and they don't want to put the yolk in there. And I just like, oh, I feel like they're just wasting something. Yeah. And they are, because despite their small size, this article I pulled up from PMC, whatever the heck, NIH.gov, just to quote it, despite their small size, egg yolks serve as a significant source of essential vitamins such as A, B2, B6, B12, biotin, folic acid, D, E, and K, along with minerals like calcium, zinc, iron, potassium, magnesium, iodine, fluoride, selenium, and phosphorus. Nick, I didn't miss any of those. I said them all correctly. They gave me some easy ones. Like we were doing an episode and we were reading some shit that's on different ingredients lists, and I was trying to pronounce them all and I sounded like a damn moron. And yeah, it was anyways. But look, the little yolk of the egg, everybody, is not out to get you. you see people avoiding eggs and then seeing Lucky Charms instead. It's like, come on, think about that now. Now stop. Now I know they're expensive, but they're the same price. A dozen eggs is the same price as a box of cereal right now. And I'll tell you, a dozen eggs is going to last you longer, be more satiating, and is a lot better for your health. So don't throw that away. So I think that's really it for eggs, guys. I don't think we have. That's why I saved it for the end. And do you have anything else to add on eggs, Nick, that you want to say?
Yeah, I would ask one thing to Mike real quick, which would be on the topic of dietary cholesterol. I have seen some reports around genetic factors when it comes to that, correlated with I don't know if I'm actually saying this right, dyslipidemia. Are you familiar with any of this at all? Could you speak on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'm not super familiar with it. That is a kind of fast developing and fast growing area of nutrition, which is, again, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, wow, people are different. What a crazy idea. But it's looking at, okay, yeah, some people may be more susceptible to dyslipidemia, which is just I'll have to double check this, but it's like you kind of make different fats in different proportions than what you normally should. Hypercholesterolemia is another one that's less common, but your body just makes too much cholesterol. So in those people, sure, you would want to be a little more cautious of your dietary cholesterol, but I'm willing to bet that if we're only isolating the dietary cholesterol, there may be bigger culprits that you want to watch out for. And that would be your more processed saturated fats. That would be your more processed foods. So again, you can't isolate just the cholesterol because, again, the two most common higher sources of dietary cholesterol being eggs and shellfish, great protein sources, especially shrimp, super lean protein. And then, like Mike was saying, all the nutrients in the egg yolk. It's one of those things where I would still look at it as an individual basis. But as far as the genetic component, it'll be interesting to follow. It's a lot like artificial sweeteners. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the recent stuff on that, like you were saying with the gut microbiome, but some of the stuff coming out about that is like, we've all heard of these people that, oh, the only thing, I stopped drinking diet soda and I lost 20 pounds. And it's like, well, diet soda's got no calories in it. That's impossible. But now there's some studies showing that maybe that person had a certain gut microbiome issue going on, or they were lacking a certain enzyme that caused their body to be triggered by this artificial sweetener and caused them to gain weight and then thus lose weight. So again, it's like, who am I to say if somebody literally only stopped eating X, Y, and Z and they felt better, they lost weight, they look better, and they're telling the honest to God truth? Great. Like, that's what we should care about at the end of the day. It's like, cool, that's how you got there, but maybe don't compare yourself to that person.
Yeah. I think we're all very similar, but maybe all very different as well. We know that for preference wise, right?
Yeah.
So that's for sure. But so what we can really say with confidence today is the best breakfast you can have is steak and eggs. I mean, throw a little cheese on there, a little hot sauce or something. Don't be afraid of that stuff too. What I think we can also understand here, and this is very important, is that I really believe, and if you guys think I'm wrong, you can tell me this, but I think one of the most important things that we do need to understand is maybe there needs to be a little more focus on body composition than there does just like, hey, the ingredients. Like when Nick and I did an episode about Make America Healthy Again, and everyone getting excited about red dye being removed from food. Like, what about getting excited about learning how to eat within your calorie deficit range or at maintenance for a little bit while and get out of that obesity state that the other article said 93% of mortality, of deaths is related to this. It's like, I think we need to like focus a little more on our quantity. I mean, quality is one thing, I get it, but quantity, so I think that's just something to kind of look at, just think about how much of everything you're eating, not exactly what you're eating. And then I think you should go that route. People should start by portioning, knowing how much of what it is, educating themselves on, just how many calories are in a handful of almonds, right? How many calories show up in a couple of eggs. Like, just know that. Know what your olive oil is. Know what's there. Once you get that down, that's going to take you out of the obese state. That's going to remove all that stuff. Then once you are on autopilot with that sort of thing, then you can start to refine and get your nutrients, worry about your vitamins, your micronutrients, and everything like that after you've kind of gotten that whole thing. Because if you're going to start looking at little micronutrients and vitamins and avoiding ingredients and things like that, you're not addressing the root. You're just going over what is being said, what is fearful. You got to go ahead and do the hard work, and you can't go extreme and just limit it. Sorry, I just had to go out my soapbox there, guys. But I did want to ask one last question because I asked you how you got your steak done. What's your favorite way to have an egg? Any which way. It could be quiche. It could be sunny side up. It could be an omelet. What, Nick, you're gonna get eggs. Forget health. Forget health right now. Well, you're gonna sit down. You're gonna enjoy a breakfast or something. Eggs are in your head here. What are you getting? How are you getting your eggs done?
I love an over easy
Okay.
because I love the yolk. Just crushing it over some potatoes or something, less some hash browns. Oh my God, that's the best way.
Nice skillet or something.
Oh yeah.
How about you, Mike?
Well, if I'm preparing it, it's got to be scrambled. One, because I'm really snobby with the consistency of my eggs. If there's any kind of burntness going on, it's gross. But if I'm paying someone and I'm at a restaurant, I'm probably going to get like a fully loaded omelet.
Very nice.
Put in all the highly processed red meats, the bacon, the sausage, but some vegetables too. We'll get some peppers and onions, mushrooms, cheese. Like, let's go big. It's one of those things. Again, how frequently you do something is what matters.
That's true. Yeah, and then once you get your baseline down and you can enjoy these kinds of things. And well, I'll tell you about mine. I'm a raging fat ass, so I like eggs Benedict with a lot of hollandaise sauce.
Ooh.
A lot of people forget that gets on the menu there with the English muffin underneath, and I think it's a little soggy with the ham hidden inside, and it's just delicious. So, all right. Well, hey guys, I think I think we made a good case. I think we got we're all educated in here in different ways about things, and we had a good article from somebody that put out some good info. Any last before I close it up, Nick? Do you have anything else you want to say in regards to this, or anything you want to say at all? Really?
Yeah, just take it by an individual basis. Too much of something is bad. So, don't take this as a clear sign to just only eat meats. Make sure that you got that balance in there. And if you have the access to it, make sure to get your health markers checked because everybody's different and we need to consider that.
Beautiful words. Mike?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that and say, don't oversimplify things. Look at the bigger picture. Keep the bigger picture always in mind. Frequency and the 80-20 rule, 90-10 rule always is going to be important. And when it comes to reading and sharing articles or headlines, pretty much, as that seems to be what people read, just at least read a couple paragraphs in, or at least if something doesn't quite pass the sniff test, maybe take a minute or two to dig into it before just blindly blasting it out there in the social media sphere or having an overreaction, a freak out. Like, just take a pause and say, this is kind of weird. This is crazy, and look into it. And you don't have to get all the information, but I don't know. I think that goes for a lot of things these days, is there's overreactions going on everywhere and it's blasting stuff out there. And, we're talking nutrition, but it can go for anything. Just do a little bit of research before blindly sharing or blindly freaking out about the latest nutrition article, fitness article. Do this, don't do that. Because like you said at the start, one day it's bad for you. The next day it's great for you. And then the next day it's bad for you. So do a little bit of your research, but do it wisely.
And do it for yourself, because if you read a scary headline and you just react to it, like you'd said with the processed meats not being seen in there, you're going to maybe go make a change in your life based on the fear from just the headline, but you're really shortchanging yourself a lot of good nutrients just because you misread that headline. Now you're actively taking what you perceived from that headline and implementing it into your life, and you're not even doing it right because you didn't read enough. So anyways, just always look in, follow the money, keep following things and figure it out for yourself and do your due diligence. If you want to contact either of these guys, Instagram's probably a good spot for both of you, I'm guessing. I know Nick, you're at Nick Becht Fit. It's NickBechtFit, correct?
Correct.
All right. And Mike, you are MG Fit Life at MG Fit Life on Instagram. Okay. So if you need to contact those guys, I'll throw their names in the show notes. And for me, it's at MFS Wellness. That's Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. I'm also at www.mfswellness.com. And yes, I said the www dot part. I did not say the HTTP // stuff. So you can also email me, Mike at mfswellness.com. So wake up tomorrow morning, make yourself some steak and eggs. Don't sweat it. Enjoy it. Love it. Measure it. Weigh it. Know what it's doing. And hey, for Mike, for Nick, I'm also Mike, and we'll see you on the next episode.